Welcome to a special edition of the Natanya Experience Sexy Science Time. Today, I am bringing none other than my husband, Ian Jones, to the show to talk about one of our favorite topics, mushrooms. We're going to break down a couple functional mushrooms and their health benefits, where you can find them, how you can take them, and what they do for the body. We're going to look at Eastern as well as Western sciences, evaluations of how these mushrooms can help us heal. And so stay tuned for some exciting nerdy science time. Welcome to another episode of the Natanya Experience Sexy Science Time. And today, for the first time ever, joining me in the studio, the one, the only, the incomparable, the man I call my husband, Ian Jones. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am. Ian's joining us today because we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics. If you don't know me and haven't heard me talk about anything about the fungal kingdom, well, then you probably don't know me. So today we're going to get into a multi-part series about all things mushrooms.
It's such a big subject. We need to talk about this a lot.
Yeah. But we're going to make it fun, and we're going to tell you why you should care and what it can do for you, whatever we're talking about, how you can incorporate this into your daily life, and also how we've been able to find a lot of healing within ourselves, in our communities, with all kinds of different mushrooms of all varieties, and not just psychedelic, although we will touch on those as well. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you. I wanted to start with talking about 4 mushrooms that have been used either for hundreds or in some cases thousands of years with traditional Chinese medicine. I'm skipping over psychedelics. It's a big subject that we need to kind of go into. I think it deserves its own episode, basically. And there are 4 mushrooms which, as well as having been used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years, so we know they're safe, they don't make people sick, there is a fair amount of science about the health benefits beyond simply these things being food or decorative. And we have to start with turkey tails, really, don't we? I get goosebumps a little bit when I think of this because, firstly, our introduction through Paul Stamets's Fantastic Fungi, which is no longer on Netflix, sadly, where he talks about how his mother called him up to tell him that she had cancer and it was stage 4, and she was basically saying goodbye to him. And he said, wait, there's this mushroom that's being used in Japan as part of breast cancer treatment, and
with tamoxifen,
in support of tamoxifen or Herceptin in some cases, and it had miraculous results for her. And may I talk about our own personal thing, or would you like to talk about that?
Well, we'll just say that that was actually a big moment for our whole family because we decided to add turkey tail to a regimen while I was dealing with something. And we had our own miracle that I probably wouldn't have believed in a couple years before that. And yeah, you were a part of that. And turkey tail is a big part of why I'm sitting here today.
And I cannot emphasize how important this mushroom is, and that there is solid science about the benefits beyond just it being food. Well, I mean, turkey tails aren't really food anyway, but
sorry, I want to cut you off. So can we just help people understand turkey tail mushroom? Where does it grow?
All these mushrooms basically are part of decaying wood. There are ways in which nature consumes dead trees and returns their nutrients to the environment. And so in this particular case, turkey tails are a bracket fungus. They look like little semicircles and they grow along the sides of a tree.
So you've probably seen them, most people, especially in the Northeast, have seen them probably on the sides of trees, and they look like basically a turkey's tail.
They're brown and they're blue. They're very pretty to look at, but they're hard and woody. They're not really food. I do need to go back to the science, though. There are a number of research papers out there about this, but it's now standard practice in China and Japan to supplement breast cancer treatment drugs with this, and the survival rates go up substantially. I mean, it's not just like a few percent, it's a big jump. I'm not in a position to quote the numbers. So wanted to talk about that mushroom. I would like to talk about reishi a little bit.
Reishi is a very, very, very cool mushroom. So let's talk about where does it grow, and do you eat it? Like those basics.
It grows again off dead wood, but quite commonly you see it growing out of the ground because it often attacks the roots of a dead or dying tree. And again, these things are hard and brown and woody. You might even stub your toe on one thinking you're going to kick it. They're that hard. And again, these have been used, I think, for like 2,000-3,000 years in Chinese medicine, and they are part of what Chinese doctors will supplement more elderly patients with because it's good for immunity, it's good for inflammation, and it's also good for mental faculties, I believe, as well.
Yeah, so reishi has been called one of those fountain of youth or elixir of life mushrooms, longevity mushroom. And so it's become really popular that way. I realize we're remiss, though, with turkey tail as well and all the mushrooms we're talking about today in terms of how people can incorporate them into their daily life. So we'll do that at the end. But just to say, we will talk about that as well.
Thank you. I'm going to then move on to my personal favorite mushroom is lion's mane. Only a history of a couple of hundred years of use in Chinese medicine. Scientific papers abound on this stuff because it has a number of compounds in it that are useful medically. We should have started really by saying that none of these statements have been evaluated by the FDA. We're not here to claim any kind of diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of disease with any of these mushrooms. We are simply drawing attention to the science that is out there and
the ancient wisdom and how people have been using plants and fungus to heal and live healthy, long lives, and we're just tapping in the Western world to some of this ancient knowledge and using Western tools to measure those health benefits, but we've actually realized them in our own bodies, so that's why we're talking about them.
These are all ones we take ourselves.
These are ones we take ourselves. Lion's mane in particular, I've actually worked with on the research side in terms of, mental and neurogenesis. There are a lot of active studies right now in Alzheimer's and dementia and others where there's sort of maybe a stroke or other disruption to the signaling of the brain to certain functionings, whether they be motor function, cognitive function. And there is incredible data, Western science, modern data, as well as ancient wisdom around lion's mane and your cognitive awareness and faculty. And it is a non-psychedelic. And we could talk about where it grows and how you grow it. And
it can. All these mushrooms can be cultivated, which is nice, which means that they're inexpensive. Lion's mane's just the cutest thing. It's this white, fluffy ball.
He gets really excited when they grow.
You can buy growing blocks from a lot of reputable producers. Forage for them, sure.
You don't need to have a greenhouse. You don't need to have a big garden.
You can grow them in your kitchen.
You can grow them in your kitchen, or if you have a basement in a cool, dark place, they come in kits and bags, and they're basically... and I was thinking of oyster, too. I know we're not talking about oyster today. Ian will keep me on task. But just to say, the cost to bring these into your life could be not significant if you wanted to even grow them yourself.
Yeah, the fruiting block costs about $30, and you can get 2 or 3 flushes of it.
What's a flush?
A flush is how you let it grow to maturity, and you'll tell by the color and the feel of it whether it's ready. Just rip it right off the block, and then another one over the next 2 or 3 weeks will grow, and you'll get a second one, and maybe if you're lucky, a third one as well, if you keep the conditions right. I was looking at a paper yesterday. I think it dates back 10 or 15 years now. It's not recent, but a study was done on, I think it was 80 or 90 elderly men and women in Japan. And they used measurable tests and fed them lion's mane, and their mental recall was significantly improved over that time. So this isn't quackery, this isn't snake oil. There is genuine science out there about that. And I love lion's mane because it smells very caramelly, it's easy to grow, and people actually use it as food too. This one is an edible one. Yeah, you can see it.
You can buy it in the grocery store.
People like fish cakes.
Yeah,
is a popular recipe way to cook lion's mane. The last mushroom I wanted to talk about is also fun because it doesn't have any real lookalikes out in the wild. So again, it's another easy one to forage for. And this one is hen of the woods, or maitake. And the science around that is interesting because it has some influence on regulating blood sugar and blood pressure.
So, yeah, they're looking in diabetes and cardiovascular, obviously areas where we have a lot of people suffering, to look at that in terms of how it can help with regulating how the sugar is broken down into the cells, right?
Yeah, they're not quite clear. There's some belief that it's actually to do with the polysaccharides in there and whether it's somehow acting on the pancreas. But the paper I first referred to with this was a test done on rats, on hypertensive, and the other one was insulin-resistant rats.
Right.
And basically, during the period that they were fed a diet that included maitake, their stats all moved closer to kind of like the desirable window. So again, it looks as though there's some very solid science there about how, as well as being delicious and cute, again, you can buy it in some supermarkets. We often see it in the big open market in Lancaster, where it is beneficial for your health.
So there are different ways that you can incorporate mushrooms into your daily life. Obviously, eating them if they're okay with you, if you don't have an allergy, if you can find them, growing them and consuming them. But what you also do, for example, with the lion's mane, is you grow it, dry it, pulverize it and make capsules, or you can buy capsules. We tend to endorse Paul Stamets and Host Defense always, of course. Always, we go to the source. Depending on people's budgets and proclivities. The other thing is we always encourage you to go to your doctor if you're managing any medical conditions and ask them if they would, have any hesitancies. Typically not, because they are food.
And let's just re-emphasize that these are all things which have been eaten by humans,
and
perhaps
animals.
in the Far East, and animals for thousands and thousands of years. So.
Yeah, but to get some of the reported benefits, there's a little bit more volume that we would recommend you consider looking into, that you can eat it. So the reason to make it a supplement is so that, just like blueberries, people talk about blueberries being, antioxidants and helping with free radicals, which we're not going to get into today, but if we want to have a lesson about what does that even mean, we can do that. But you just can't eat enough of them sometimes to get all of the benefit. You'd have to eat pints and pints and pints. And so by drying, pulverizing, and not putting any other ingredients in, and when you do it yourself, then or if you get it from Host Defense, which, by the way, we have no financial tie to them, we just big fans, you can put into your body a larger dose that can basically, hopefully, we think, do more proactive wellness. And the thing I wanted to break down for people in a non-scientific community was about how these mushrooms and how the neurons, explain a little bit about what's happening. And I want to focus on lion's mane personally, because I even felt like at points I could even sense almost like you took a focus pill. And I'm not saying it's that way, but you almost feel like some people feel it with coffee. I've given up coffee. That kind of feeling of like a clarity moment comes over you. Very subtle.
I am not in any position to comment on that. My understandings of lion's mane are around its production of nerve growth factor, and also that it contains ergothioneine, which science has shown have some benefits to brain development and giving neural protection and promoting healthy nervous system.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be any kind of, I don't know, would you call those psychoactive effects? I don't
No,
know,
but I mean, we think of psychedelic mushrooms and people talk about tripping and seeing colors and that part. And I'm saying there are more subtle and non-psychedelic, but they are psychological effects that not just me, people report noticing. And so that's why for me anyway, I can tell on a day that I didn't take my lion's mane in the morning specifically. And I say it's very subtle. Some people won't pick that up, but it almost tells me, and whether it's sort of psychosomatic where I'm sort of making that sensation, it doesn't even matter to me. I feel like it's sort of like this superpower power up feeling. Some people get it, like I said, from caffeine. But I believe that when we have our natural body systems strengthened and heightened, it just kind of powers you up for your whole day. And then ultimately, they're looking at it similarly to the way they're looking at stem cells, which I know is controversial, but stem cells in the fact of how stem cells have a base instruction that can be any cells. And as a healing agent, mushrooms, you were saying it before, I'm going back to before about the coming from the decayed wood or the decayed plant matter or animal matter. I mean, really, we rot and mushrooms grow from it. And they take all of these, I'm just going to say, nutrients, chemicals, things in the ground, in the earth that might be plant or animal, and they turn it into this new set of chemicals.
There's a whole history and an interesting backstory to mushrooms that we do not have time for today.
I know, but we'll get into.
I think that we're kind of running out of time a little bit.
Yeah.
So dietary supplements obviously can be a bit of a minefield. There's a lot of junk out there that's full of fillers, doesn't contain the substances that you want. So do some research. I'm happy to share the science about that. I've got a list of scientific papers that I can refer to. And
we can include that with the podcast at the end.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to thank you for doing this experiment with me. Very openly. Ian doesn't jump on the mic very much, but we have these conversations all the time, and we have them with our friends, and they ask a lot. And so we want to be very clear. We are amateurs. We are just enthusiasts, and we're trying to share what we know and what's been helping our family heal.
None of these are, well, with the exception perhaps of turkey tails,
none
of these are miracles. The way I see it is it just pushes our odds up a little bit. It just gives us that little better chance at health. It's a few percent here, it's a few percent there. If you take this, if you take that, it just adds a little layer and a little boost.
I guess I want to leave with this. In Fantastic Fungi, the movie, which go find it wherever you can. Yes, it was on Netflix for a very long time. Now I think it's floating. You know how they do with that. But anyway, there was a part in it where Paul talked about different uses, environmental uses for fungi that they had been exploring over the years with different, with the UN, with different private industry. But one example really struck me, and it was about the oil spills. Do you remember that?
Yeah, no, that's oyster mushrooms. And
so I know. I'm just saying, but just the idea.
They deserve an episode on their own.
So just to say that the fact that they put mushroom spores on oil spills and were able to have the mushrooms do their magic and take from pollutants and tar and chemically things and rejigger the elements essentially, and eventually created an entire ecosystem, because when they did that and started to grow, they also then attracted bugs and birds and things from other places that would fly in there and then brought other material. And then they actually had essentially changed an oil spill into like a little habitat. And so I think about that inside our bodies. Mm-hmm. And I think about that kind of magic. And so when I say healing, even though there's not a paper on every single thing that we're saying, I just intuitively feel like if they can do that with that oil spill, what might they be doing inside of us? And I can't help it because we are on the forefront. And I'm going to do a shout out to our man Ryan Castle, who's looking at this in cannabis, not in fungus, but just recently published a pretty impressive paper about the effects of cannabis on THC on oncology, cancer tumor shrinking. It's the same kind of thing. We are seeing this across the board. There is a lot of research underway by a lot of institutions about fungus essentially eating and curing our cancers. So what is cancer? Sickness. So I'm thinking every disease, everything in the body, all that junk that doesn't belong, from the processed food, from the chemical pollutions, from our stress, from our trauma. It's unproven, so don't shake. I know you're like, we don't have this, but that's
some of it is proven.
Right, but I mean, like, we're not making a claim. We're just saying this is why we're passionate, and this is why we want other people to feel it for themselves. Would you say that's...
Yes, yeah, accurate? And there is science out there about it.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, we're just saying this is what fuels us to sit here and talk about mushrooms.
So, thank you.
That's good. Anything else that you want to add?
I could be here all day talking about it. Just that with turkey tails, the science looks at how it inhibits the growth of blood cells around tumours and how it stops cancer cells being sticky and that kind of thing. So there is a rationality to these ideas. It's not quackery and snake oil. And I want to leave on a strong message.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Sexy Science Time. Not saying that we're sexy, although aren't we? But that science can be sexy for everyone. Thank you.